In the mid-19th century, in a small town in France, narrow streets echoed with the sound of sewing from a tiny house. There, the poor son of a tailor sat among scraps of fabric, sprinkling colors onto paper with an old brush. No one knew that this child's name would one day be remembered throughout the history of art. This child's name was Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and his story is that of a genius born into poverty who would go on to illuminate the world with color. Fact 1. He was the son of a poor tailor. Pierre-Auguste Renoir was born in 1841 in Limoges, France, into the family of a poor tailor. He was one of 7 children, and their life was simple, often very difficult. His father, Léonard Renoir, was a tailor, sewing other people's clothes by day and working late into the night to provide for his family. His mother, Marguerite Merlet, did sewing work as well and cared for the children. Their home was modest, a narrow old street filled with the clinking of needles and the hum of a sewing machine. Yet within this simplicity, there was a warm family spirit. Love may have been scarce, but hard work, patience, and the struggle of life were abundant. Renoir was one of the most beloved children in the family. His mother noticed his love for drawing and never discouraged it. One day when Renoir couldn't find paper, he drew on the wall of their home. His mother didn't scold him. She simply smiled and said, "If you are going to draw, at least make it something beautiful." This simple but understanding response did not stifle Renoir's creative spirit. It strengthened it. For him, art was never a luxury or the pastime of the wealthy. It was a joy born from life itself. Fact 2. He painted porcelain as a child. Even though Renoir's childhood was full of hardship, color never disappeared from his life. When his family moved to Paris, he was only 13 years old. Instead of going to school, he began working at a porcelain factory to help support his family. He spent his days painting dozens of plates, cups, and vases by hand, flowers, birds, and floral motifs. Sometimes the morning sun would stream through the factory windows, and Renoir would pause, watching how the light transformed the colors on his work. He later recalled these moments. The light seemed to dance within the colors. I wanted to learn that dance. This simple work became his first academy. There he learned to feel color harmony, brightness, and the effect of light. The very skills that would later make him a master of Impressionism. His co-workers sometimes laughed at him. "Why do you paint so carefully? It's just a plate." But to Renoir, these plates were never just dishes. They were his first canvases of art. Fact 3. He rejected academic art. At a young age, Renoir began taking art lessons in Paris. He studied in the studio of the famous academic teacher, Charles Galette. There, everything followed strict rules. Lines had to be precise, figures perfectly drawn, light and shadow carefully calculated. But for Renoir, these rigid rules stifled creativity. He felt that art was not just about technical perfection. It was about capturing the breath of life and the spirit of humanity. Once his teacher looked at his work and said, "Renoir, there is too much light in your paintings. Everything shouldn't be this bright." Renoir quietly replied, "But life itself is bright." These words marked the beginning of his artistic path. He moved away from the classical academic style and began to depict natural light, everyday life, and ordinary people. Together with friends Claude Monet, Alfred Sisley, and Frédéric Bazille, he painted in the streets of Paris, trying to capture the fleeting effects of sunlight. At the time, this style was considered wrong, unfinished, and rough. But for Renoir, it was life itself, ever-changing, vibrant, and full of beauty. Fact 4. He was one of the founders of Impressionism. In 1860s Paris, a group of young artists had grown tired of the old rules. They no longer wanted to see mythological figures painted in dark, heavy tones. They wished to capture life itself, the fleeting spirit of nature, on canvas. Among this group were Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Claude Monet, Camille Pissarro, Edgar Degas, and Alfred Sisley. They refused to exhibit at the official Salon de Paris and instead organized their own exhibitions, a bold and risky move at the time. Once, Monet displayed a painting called Impression, Sunrise, Critics mocked it and labeled the style Impression, using the term derisively. But Renoir and his friends embraced the name, and thus Impressionism was born in art history. Renoir's paintings became some of the movement's brightest examples: sunlit skin, soft tones, joyful people. He depicted light as if it were breathing with color. For him, art was not a cold copy of reality, but a song of feelings and moments. Renoir once said, "I do not want to see pain in life. I want only light, joy, and love in the paintings I create." And he succeeded. For when you look at his works, it feels as if you are experiencing a moment of happiness under the sun. Fact 5. His religious views and life philosophy. Pierre-Auguste Renoir was never known as a particularly religious man. He rarely attended church and did not strictly follow religious rules. Yet within him, faith existed in another form: a belief in life, human beauty, and light. For Renoir, God was not in stone-built churches, but hidden in human nature and creative power. He once said, "I see God in the smile on a person's face." He had witnessed the darker sides of the world: war, pain, and poverty. But he did not depict them in his paintings. He believed that creating beauty was itself a form of worship. For him, painting was like praying, a quiet, sincere, light-filled prayer. Some critics called him an excessively happy painter. Renoir responded, "Life is bitter enough. My job is to give people a little joy." He did not paint religious symbols, yet every work of his radiates divine harmony and light. For Renoir, God was beauty, and beauty was God's language. Fact 6. His personal family life. Pierre-Auguste Renoir built much of his art around love, closeness, and family, values that were also central to his personal life. In his youth, Renoir was a quiet and modest man. He did not marry until he was 40, as he had devoted his life entirely to art. But in the mid-1880s, a young and kind-hearted woman named Aline Cherigot entered his life. Aline became his model, friend, and life partner. She appears in many of Renoir's paintings, most famously in Bal du Moulin de la Galette, in Luncheon of the Boating Party. Her smile, warmth, and love of life brought softness and light to his works. They married in 1890 and had 3 children: Pierre, Jean, and Claude. Renoir loved his family dearly. He often painted his children in the garden, by the sea, or around the table. Simple yet joyful moments immortalized on canvas. Aline was his greatest support. When Renoir developed severe arthritis, she never left his side. She tied brushes to his fingers and helped him continue painting. Renoir later said, "There were 2 great miracles in my life: colors and Aline." These family bonds became the most sincere source of the warm tones, human closeness, and joy of life that shine through his paintings. Fact 7. He never gave up painting, despite arthritis. As he aged, Pierre-Auguste Renoir developed severe rheumatoid arthritis. His hands and fingers became twisted, making it extremely difficult to hold a brush. Even the simplest paintings were a significant physical challenge. But for Renoir, art was life itself, and life alone was not enough to stop him. He continued painting by tying brushes to his fingers. Sometimes he had to pick up and release the brush several times while working at the table, yet his artwork still radiated light and joy. He told his friends, "My hands do not obey me, but my spirit still sees the colors." The paintings he created during these years, especially those depicting women and children, carry incredible depth, both technically and emotionally. Renoir's determination showed that a true artist never lets physical limitations hold them back. What matters most is bringing light and beauty into the world. Arthritis bent his body, but it could never bend his spirit, a testament to the enduring vitality of his art and his endless passion for beauty. Fact 8. His son, Jean Renoir, and family legacy. For Pierre-Auguste Renoir, family was not only a source of personal happiness, but also a living continuation of his artistic legacy. His son, Jean Renoir, became one of the most famous French film directors of the 20th century. Growing up surrounded by his father's love for art, Jean carried the understanding of visual beauty, color, and light into his films. Renoir's other children were also drawn to the arts. Their lives were filled with color, music, and creativity. In his later years, Pierre-Auguste often said, "My greatest work is not my paintings. It is my children and the love of art that lives in their souls." Renoir's artistic legacy was not limited to his canvases. He passed his passion for creativity to his family, creating a foundation for future generations to feel and express beauty. In this way, his name became immortal, not only through Impressionism, but also through his family legacy. Fact 9. He spent his later years in southern France. In the 1890s, Pierre-Auguste Renoir decided to move away from the noise of Paris and settled in Cagnes-sur-Mer, a quiet town in southern France. Here, light, sun, and nature became his main sources of inspiration. He created a spacious studio in his country home and spent his days painting and gardening. The constantly changing sunlight, the sparkle of the sea, and the colors of flowers became central motifs in his paintings. Together with his wife Aline and their children, Renoir found a warm sanctuary for both family life and art. Every day he tied brushes to his hands and painted, capturing women, garden landscapes, or beloved children. This period became the richest and most luminous phase of his creativity. Renoir once said, "Here, under the sun, I truly live and paint." Cagnes-sur-Mer gave him both a peaceful life and endless inspiration. The soft tones and play of light in his final works clearly reflect the influence of the tranquil southern sun. Fact 10. I am still learning in his final years. By the final years of his life, Pierre-Auguste Renoir had already become a legend in art history. Although arthritis and old age brought physical challenges, his spirit remained full of creativity and the desire to learn. With each new painting, he discovered something new about light, color, and emotion. For Renoir, art was never just about technique or fame, it was life itself. In his later years, he lived a quiet life in Cagnes-sur-Mer, spending time with his family and close friends. He would still study his paintings, searching for new colors and ways to capture light. His famous last words are remembered as, "Painting is still the most beautiful thing for me, and I am still learning." Pierre-Auguste Renoir passed away in 1919 at the age of 78 in Cagnes-sur-Mer. His death was a great loss to the art world, but his works and spirit continue to live on as an invaluable legacy. Renoir's life and art show that it is never too late to learn and create. Poverty, physical limitations, arthritis, and life's hardships could not stop him. He always sought light, color, and joy. In his paintings, we see not only art, but also a love of life and a belief in human beauty. Renoir's story reminds us that the creative spirit never dies. If you are fascinated by the world's greatest artists and their stories, subscribe to our channel, hit the bell icon, and don't miss our updates. In every video, we bring you history, art, and inspiring stories.